Good afternoon, everyone. Time is 5:30, April 23rd. This is the second meeting of the Ad Hoc Committee, the Search Ad Hoc Committee for City Manager in Laredo, Texas. I'd like to ask for the Secretary to ask for a roll call.
Jerry Schubel,
Present.
Jeff Quigg,
Present.
Rafael Dueñas Sr.,
Present.
Elmo Lopez Jr., Ana Benavides Galo, present, Ivan Rodriguez,
Present.
Dr. David Garza,
Present.
Teresia Cortez, present, Hector J. Garcia.
Do we have a quorum?
Yes, we have a quorum.
We do have a quorum.
Yes, we have a quorum.
Yep. All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all again. This is our second meeting. We hope this meeting will be as productive as the first and an ongoing series of meetings. I know that we had some requirements that we had asked you all to do, and I want to thank everybody for responding to those as well. We have a lot of material to cover today, primarily involving the first item on the agenda, involving the qualifications. So would like to, if I could, request that as we go through the process, that we keep, our comments. If there's some generic comments to the purpose of the qualifications, that would be helpful to speed up the process.
Chairman, may I ask to see if there's any citizen comments? May I ask to see if there's any citizen comments
Yes.
to the public? Any comments?
Are there any public, are we going to have any opportunity for anybody to sign up? Did anybody sign up?
No one signed up, just in case.
We have no one signed up for public comments, okay?
The next item on the agenda would be approval of the minutes for April 5th.
I just want to ask if there's any, are there any general comments from the committee members before we start as well? Does anyone have any comments? That being none? Okay, let's go ahead and go into the first item of the agenda is the approval of the minutes. Everyone should have received a copy of the minutes last week for review. Are there any changes or deletions to the minutes?
Just the spelling of my name is CIA. Tricia.
Are there any others?
Actually, the spelling of my name is a double N, A-double-N-A.
Yeah. Any other changes? With those corrections, is there any opposition to the minutes as they were written? I will submit that as unanimous consent. The minutes will stand as written, subject with those two changes, the corrections and names. May continue on as we have for discussion purposes. The discussion with the possible action of the minimum requirements and desired qualifications for the city manager position. We had, last meeting, we had asked that the committee members submit by Friday a series of what they preferred or desired the qualifications for the city manager that may have not been included or may have been included, but you wish to elaborate more as to what was submitted in the prior packet that we had last week. So we would refer back to the items that were included for the qualifications of the city manager, which is, we haven't named these tabs, but it's basically the city manager description that goes through the whole job description. And it is that 4-page document that starts off, with the actual job description, the position of the job description. Will everybody refer to that? Sure we're on. And in this is what has been used and has been submitted as well for her review. There are, on page 3, minimum qualifications. If I may make reference to you all to the 3rd page, it makes reference to the minimum qualifications, which has a bachelor's degree from an accredited college or university and at least 10 years of experience in municipal government, of which 7 years must have been at a supervisory managerial capacity as a city manager, assistant city manager, or department director. And prudential manager certification with the International City and County Management Association is desirable, and a master's degree in public administration is preferred. So these is what has been submitted based on the charter, correct?
Chairman, page 15, if you look at page number 15 of the charter, under qualifications, for the most part, there is a 7-year experience from municipal government, a bachelor's degree, and it says of which 5 years are supervisory. So note here that it was changed at one point to 7 years. So I'm not sure if you wanna leave it at 7 years or don't make any change to that 7 years. That's the only difference that we have here. Master's degree is preferred. And the city manager must be a resident of the city of Laredo at the time of appointment.
So that page 15, which is the Article 3, Section 3.02, regards to qualifications, is what's actually cited in the charter, right?
Yes,
So maybe that's what I should be
But we
referring
need
to.
to correct that.
And, you know,
right.
so just for the record, the charter, the city manager qualifications under the city charter, under city manager, Article 3.02 qualifications states, the city manager shall be appointed on the basis of executive administrative qualifications. She shall have a bachelor's degree and no less than 7 years' experience in municipal government, 5 of which must be supervisory managerial experience. A master's degree in public administration is preferred. The city manager need not be a resident of the city or the state at the time of the appointment, but must reside inside the city audit office. Those are the basic qualifications for the city manager as stated in the charter, correct? And then, if we go back to the actual 4-page document that elaborates more on some of the qualifications that are included in here, is something that we will use as a basis for our meeting today. In addition to that, there's an additional tab that has included some of your responses that were submitted by each of our committee members. And I believe there was one committee member, but actually that committee member has expressed that he was satisfied with the actual description. Is that correct, Mr. Blake? That was actually included, there was no changes?
Yeah, with no changes.
So,
Other than I believe that we need to correct the qualifications, minimum qualifications to exactly match what is stated in the city manager and the city charter. So we just change that out to match the word for word there.
so in the tab, there's a tab where each committee member that responded listed some of the qualifications that, and then there's 3 columns that are listed in your book that says that you wish to include them in the job description or do not wish to include them in the job description, or they may already be included for part of clarification or included in there. So for purpose of today's meeting, I think we need to spend time kind of reviewing your input, everyone's input, and have some dialogue and discussion as to what was, you know, what were you seeking in your recommendations, and where we want to, you know, finalize that job description for purposes of eventually the search committee be able to go out there and select a candidate they want to submit to us. Is that correct? Well, good. Well, there's no order here other than what's listed here. I think most of us that have read the qualifications, you know, tend to agree. I would tend to say that most of us, it's a very thorough, but there might have been some other things that we wanted to reinforce. We could go one by one and ask for everyone's comments to elaborate on it, and reinforce with you what's included or what your thoughts are. I will tell you what, I tend to reserve at the very end and let everyone speak first. So I'd be glad to start off with Mr. Duenas, who is the second one on the list, to want to share with us your recommendations here, if you want them to be added to the job description or not added to the job description, but those are just your wishes. Mr. Duenas, what would you like to say?
Would you like for me to read them and then for you all to discuss? Would you all like for me to read them and then you all discuss one by one?
It's up to you. I mean, we could read them ourselves. I mean,
Okay.
but if you want, you can read them for yourself and what you want to be able to say, why you're saying it. What is it you like to see? So in your area, you're basically, there's going to be a qualification which both focus on the category of experience and knowledge, and then the other one on abilities and skills. So, Mr. Duenas, if you tell us why, what it is that you want to include under experience and knowledge.
solo ese, Jerry.
Yeah, it's under your area, it's this tab right here, it says experience and knowledge. You listed in the first item that you wanted to include there, that you wanted, you know, it's important that they know that's the part I'm talking about.
Ok, pues no sé cómo, no sé qué comentarte en realidad, pero ¿cuál sería la duda?
La pregunta, and I'm gonna switch to Spanish.
Sorry, eh?
And I guess which way we can do it, in English or Spanish. But the question is gonna be, is that you indicate under experience and knowledge that it's important that they know the needs and the issues of the border, especially for Laredo, Texas, as one of the qualifications they'd like to see in a manager. So is this something you want to be sure it's included in the job description, or is just something that you think would be nice? You know?
¿Cómo puedo explicarme en español? Sí, es más confortable para mí. ¿Cómo poderlo explicar? Mira, no es tanto que haya vivido, sino a mí lo que me gustaría saber de él o que él pudiera tener es qué tan familiarizado está con la frontera, qué tan familiarizado está con Laredo. En realidad me gustaría preguntarle si él conoce las fortalezas y las debilidades de Laredo.
Okay.
Eso es lo que a mí me gustaría de él. Laredo es diferente a McAllen, aunque a veces lo comparamos mucho, diferente a San Antonio. Yo quiero saber, no quiero decirle qué es lo que nosotros tenemos en Laredo. Yo no quiero decirle cuáles son las fortalezas que yo veo de Laredo o que he visto en 30 años. Quiero que él me las diga. Eso es básicamente, lo quiero yo oír a él. Porque si yo le digo que en Laredo hay pues me lo va a repetir. Me va a decir lo que yo quiero oír de él. Entonces, por eso básicamente se lo dejo abierto. ¿Qué es lo que él sabe de nosotros? No sé si quede claro.
Does anyone agree with Mr. Dueñas, or does anybody disagree with Mr. Dueñas' way? You know, I guess understand, that's something you'd like to see yourself. You want to make sure they have the knowledge and understanding of what's going on in Laredo. And
If you look
understand
at,
the
if you
cultures of
look at
Laredo.
page 2 on the qualifications, at the very last statement, it says, is familiar with Texas-Mexico borders and their issues. That somewhat addresses what Mr. Dueñas is asking for. However, it doesn't include Laredo. So maybe the inclusion needs to be is familiar with Texas-Mexico borders, Laredo, and their issues. So now it relates to both Texas-Mexico borders and Laredo specifically, because there's nowhere, only in one line item does it talk about the city of Laredo.
May I make a suggestion and maybe put local, state, and federal issues related to the border? And that would be all-inclusive? Local, state, and
Thoughts?
federal?
I mean, I think it's very clear that in the qualification, you want somebody who understands the border.
Yes.
But Mr. Dueñas, more specifically, does he understand Laredo? Okay, and that, the question is, do we want to include that? And in the criteria of selecting the candidates, that would be a question that the search firm would say, how familiar are you with Laredo? Do you know about Laredo? Now, the question that will become apparent is that if it's gonna be a requirement, they know about Laredo. They may know about the border, but they may not know specifically about Laredo. So that's why I wanna make sure everybody understands that when we look at what we wanna add and incorporate as a requirement or as a required or a preferred, that we distinguish between what is required and what is preferred, correct? So that's what I would welcome your thoughts and your input, Mr. Rodriguez.
I'd like to make a comment. I think what we're gonna find is that between all of us and what is already out there, my goodness, there's gonna be probably 50 qualities that we would love to see in a person. First and foremost, we need to, be aware that that individual is gonna have assistants and gonna have department heads that have a tremendous amount of knowledge regarding international trade and so forth. That person should have an understanding, absolutely. But I think that in talking about what we want them to have, where we need to be a little bit careful is, let's say that we were blessed and at the end of this process, we have 100 people from across the United States who want to be the city manager of this city. Then out of that 100 who are interested, based on what we begin to put as requirements or qualifications or preferred, we begin to slice off part of that 100. Bilingual, oh my goodness, there goes 70 of them. Now we're down to 30. Knowledge of the border, there goes another 10. We're down to 20. Degrees and so forth, there goes another 8, you know, and then we eventually whittle it down to 3 people. You know, are those the ones who really could have done the best overall job for our city, considering where we've been, where we are, the potential that we have? So I guess I kind of throw that out just as a, you know, something to think about, and maybe even a caution, I guess, as we move forward with these.
Sometimes broad is better, what you're looking at.
It could be, particularly if we look at who we've had as a city manager the last 3 times. Very knowledgeable on the border, but my goodness gracious, they're gone. You know, the first one, the second one, the third one went by the wayside for whatever reason. Extremely knowledgeable on the border, but did that end up being such an important quality after all? Because there was a disconnect between the administration, the staff, the working people, you know, the ship's crew, if you will, and the captain. There was a disconnect with the city and with the people and everything, to the point that they're gone. Another one comes in, same disconnect, they're gone. Third one comes in, a disconnect, they're gone. So we need to really look at this thing as, you know, at where we've been with our last 3 city managers, and then what we feel truly is the most important attributes that we hope to get, so that we can change this city around and really get it going forward.
My only point in raising the issue is that we can make it very, very specific and narrow it down too specific, that it may eliminate, to make it harder. And I understand, I think Mr. Duenas, I think we all understand that we want someone to understand, someone who understands the border, a city like Laredo, but if you want them to understand specifically all that's going on in Laredo, that may be narrow it down even further, you know. You would think that whatever the candidate would be, would have done some research or knows a little bit about Laredo before they applied prior to this. So I just want to make sure that when we get to the point of determining whether we want to require it or it would be an item of preference, that we all, you know, agree on that.
And, you know, Mr. Chairman, the point that he brings up, though, is real important.
Sure.
So once we select somebody, how much control are we gonna have, or is the council gonna have, on telling that individual, you know what, I want you to attend 3 meetings with Alpha, I want you to attend 3 meetings with the U.S. Brokers Association, I want you to attend 3 meetings with the Truckers Association, to get that, you know, to get caught up on the important information I think that you're talking about. Just,
And I'm sure that when we go through the process of evaluating the candidates, and we determine the criteria to rate them or score them, that there may be some things that we will score, you know, differently, because based on our personal preference, you know, if Mr. Duenas not putting words in your mouth, but say, hey, I like this person higher because this person may be more knowledgeable of Laredo than any other candidates, that would be your consideration or someone else's consideration. That would come, I think, at the scoring or at the evaluation process. Right now, we're focusing on qualifications, and that's why we're trying to narrow down, is this something we want to include? Mr. Duenas has indicated he would like to see, you know, do we want to include that as a required qualification or not? That would be that's why I understand, Mr. Duenas, right? So, would you like for this, Mr. Duenas, in your view, is this something you want to require it, or do you want to just, as a preferred, include it in the job description? Or, well, it's already, I think you put the categories here as not included in the job description, Ms. Cabello?
Right.
Or
In case
already
it's
in the
been
job
duplicated.
description, it's already in the job description, but he would want to, do you want to include that the information in regards to Laredo specific be included, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So we will put comma Laredo to that section that Mr. Quigg noted.
correct?
No, I mean, with all due respect to Mr. Duena's request, I'm inclined, I was just referring to what he was asking.
Okay, so then we'll do
I
one.
would prefer to keep it a little bit more broad and leave it as is written, as familiar with Tex-Mexico borders and their issues. I don't necessarily, I think it'd be a benefit if they knew a little bit about Laredo, but they can learn about Laredo too. I mean, there's a lot to be gained from that as well. So I would be inclined to just leave it the way it is and use it as just a recommendation or something.
Does anyone disagree with that?
No, I want to support that. You know, the best candidate may be somebody who's not from Laredo, but who's got excellent management skills and is a quick study. And so I think, I agree with what everybody's saying, let's keep it broad as we can. I think we're all kind of saying the same thing. We prefer the same things. But I think that we ought to not narrow it down so tightly to say, well, it has to be somebody who's from here who absolutely knows everything. There are a lot of people who live here and don't know anything about Laredo.
That's right. Ms. Gale?
Well, I don't think he was specifically saying they need to be from here, but I think that if someone's gonna come and interview and apply for this job, they should have already studied up on Laredo. So I kind of see where Mr. Dueñas is coming from, because you can have the best manager around, and if he walks into a situation that he has no idea, he can be very ineffective. So I don't see the harm in putting it in part of the job description, but I think it should say Laredo. I mean, this is for the city manager of Laredo, so I just would be wary of someone that came all the way down here and didn't already study up and know our major issues.
But I think you can weed those people out who are telling us a line and they don't know what they're talking about. That's you to select for those folks.
Well, you're right, that's true.
Any other thoughts? In consideration of what you just said, Ms. Gale, if we were to look at going back and narrowing down the specifics of the knowledge of Laredo during the evaluation process of the candidate, that would, in your rating of the candidate, would that suffice? Would that meet perhaps I guess the issue of how much knowledge or understanding they have of Laredo versus narrowing down the selection of the candidate and imposing that requirement? Because they may be knowledgeable, they know where it is, or they may know about it, they may have crossed through here one time, but at what point do you determine how much knowledge do they need to have about Laredo? So at what point what is enough? So that's why I want to make sure that we all understand clearly that if we narrow it down too much, or could we include that as part of the evaluation of the candidates and how you rate them, that you may rate someone higher if they would have a better understanding of the Laredo situation. And that would, I guess my question is that to Mr. Dueñas, because you're the one who's asking that, you're the one who's making that recommendation.
I would like to reframe, I agree with what you're saying, and the way I look at it is in terms of filters. And, where do you want to put the filter? Right at the very bottom, so that those people who don't really have a whole lot of knowledge up front get weeded out? And then whose job is that? Is that the search firm's job? Which is a secondary question. Or do you put the filter at our level, we interview these folks, and you can figure out who's got the heart and soul and the brain for it. I think we're already at a little bit of a disadvantage because we didn't get any proposals. So, let's cast a wide net with some, specifications, but let's not cast it too tight because we may lose somebody.
Mr. Dueñas?
Quisiera clarificar un poquito y a lo mejor le ayuda a los aplicantes. ¿Por qué para mí es importante que conozcan Laredo? Porque la gente que habla de Laredo piensa que nada más hay puente, que nada más hay 14,000 camiones cruzando diario. Y no es así. Tenemos 1,000 diversidades de pajaritos que nadie sabe que existen. Tenemos única especie en extinción de un pajarito que existe en Laredo. Tenemos plaga de perros y gatos en el sur. Y nuestro city manager tiene que gobernar para todos ellos. Nosotros tenemos un problema de tráfico, nosotros el gremio de las agencias aduanales en el norte, pero no se escapa el sur porque nuestros empleados viven en el sur, Santa Rita, Santa Fe, Cuatro Vientos, Santo Niño. Entonces, necesitamos que tenga un conocimiento pleno de toda la ciudad, ¿verdad? Ver cómo se está planeando esta ciudad, ver cuáles son las necesidades de la ciudad.
But the only way they're gonna know that, Mr. Dueñas, is if they lived here, and that's what you're narrowing, if you narrow it down to someone who understands the intricacies of what's going on in our city, then you're narrowing it down to someone who basically, either has lived here, or is familiar, has lived here in the past and is familiar with them. And I think to the point of, Dr. Garza's saying, is that if we get too specific about this person understanding those issues that you just raised, then that's gonna narrow down the candidates that would be probably brought before us from the search firm. And that's why, I think that's why this discussion needs to be clear, that we all understand what we're asking, what you're asking. So, again, I don't want to, as a committee member, my view, I don't want to narrow it down too specific and eliminate candidates that may be good candidates because they may not have had those specific knowledges or information that you're alluding to. I understand the importance of them, but I think it would put us in an awkward position of narrowing down to specifics, too many specifics for a candidate that would come forth. Have we ever had that situation where we get too specific on any candidate that the city has hired? Okay?
That is correct.
Yeah.
For the sake of time, I'm thinking that maybe we put it to a vote and then look at those that are not common, because I know that we all want certain qualifications. Maybe we should look at all of them and say, which are the qualifications? Do we all agree that this is the same? Put it in somehow and then get to the ones that are different.
Well, yes,
Concentrate our time there.
you said yourself, this may be a long meeting.
Yes, well, we don't mind. We'll stay here till midnight if we have to.
I'm just trying to set the tone for purpose of discussion, because this is the item that we have on the agenda, and I want to make sure that we all understand what we're asking, what is being asked of all of us to do as we make some of these decisions, and what we want to incorporate is incorporated in the qualifications already, or we wish to add that is not included. And I want to remind everybody that there will be a process of reviewing the candidates, but maybe even then, your own criteria of selecting, seeing that those qualifications that are met as a minimum, and that you would like to see in addition to.
During the interview process is what you could do that and say it specifically. So right now, I would recommend that you do keep it general and say, have knowledge of the border, et cetera, federal and state, or something to that effect. And then when you actually do the interviews, then you can find out through your questioning,
Okay.
do they really know Laredo or not?
And we
And
may
then
choose
make
to
a
go a different
determination.
direction. Go ahead, Mr.
But I was gonna comment, maybe to address, that very, very valid concern, is when you are going through the interview process, one of the questions is, do you have a working knowledge of the border, or specifically, Laredo, Texas? Yes or no? And then if the answer is no, in lieu of the information that you currently don't have, how do you plan to address this? And then leave a little paragraph for them to put in there, I plan to do this, because that way, like the doctor said, we can cast a bigger net, because we just don't have a real good track record as a city of attracting a lot of out-of-town people. At least, I believe. Is that correct?
That is correct, and as you're speaking, we're formulating the questions for you for the interview process.
Yeah.
So I'm noting that down, something important.
So just for purposes, again, as we review these qualifications, preferred qualifications that all of us submitted, there seems to be some common points that all of us, I guess agreed upon without talking to each other. But is there, I want to narrow it down. Is there anything that you submitted that was not included in the job description that you wish you would have been included in the job description? How about we start there? Ms. Cortez.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I thought that everybody's recommendations were excellent and, really got to the heart of the matter, and what Mr. Rodriguez submitted was so thorough, and Ms. Galo, everybody. I would like for us to as Laredo continues to grow so quickly, I do think that we need to have somebody who knows how to manage growth sustainably. And I didn't see that anywhere in the text. I think sustainable development practices are very important to controlling sprawl and things that the master plan has tried to address. If we could somehow, I would want to recommend if we could somehow include language where they have demonstrated experience or knowledge of managing growth through sustainable development practices. I think that would be terrific. And I don't know if this is, secondly, Mr. Chairman, I don't know if this is the right moment per se, but quality of life is kind of what attracts and draws people to stay in cities. They have to be safe, they have to be prosperous, have job opportunities, of course, and good schools, but I think quality of life is a huge draw for making people want to come and stay, or just staying or graduating and staying. So the quality of life issue, again, I don't know if this is the right spot for it, but if it is, I would like to include language about that as well.
I really thank you for bringing that up, because I think that you're right on when you talk about the whole issue of sustainable development practices. And I'm glad you brought it up, because that is one thing that I do believe that is something in today's environment that we should include in any job description of any key position in any city, much more importantly for the city manager. So I would echo your recommendation to include that was not included in the actual preferred description. Maybe that the candidates be able to share any knowledge or understanding or experiences past experiences in this area. I think that would be an added feature to the qualifications. So I think that would be something that I would like to see us include. Does anyone have any comments, agree or disagree with that? Does anyone understand what we're talking about? You know, Ms. Cortez or I could elaborate more on it. Do we understand clearly if we want to incorporate them in?
Again, I'm going to just bring it out. I think that's already covered. It says the knowledge of modern and highly complex principles and practices of municipal administration and organizations. So it's already identifying. If someone has a specialty skill that they have quality, it's already identified as a trait there, as well as the knowledge of current social, political, and economic trends. These are trends that are occurring right now that are important to us. And I think that if someone has that ability, they can present that as, look, I have this capability, and it would set them aside from someone else. But to physically write it, I think it's already covered under there. But then again, if you want to be a little bit more specific on it, you can do that.
I saw that as well. And as I looked at the comments, I think there's gonna be some duplication in regards to some of the things that are there, for lack of a better word, duplication, or perhaps, worded a different way that delivers the same message. But I think if we could reinforce it to specifics, I think sustainable development is something right now that is key in any, I guess, thriving community. And I think it would not hurt to add that to it on top of what's already included in here. I mean, we're not taking anything out, we're adding or reinforcing something that you're saying, Mr. Puig.
I mean, I will agree with you on that. I mean, I think that knowledge and experience with sustainable development practices can be added to one of the line items that's already there.
Thank you. I just think because Laredo continues to grow so quickly, we're not like a city that's just kind of plateauing. And I think it's very important that a person can bring that knowledge and skill set. Is very,
So this would be something that we would want to incorporate into or reinforce and include.
May I see
into
that in
this.
form of a motion so that we all can agree?
You want, go ahead and make that motion?
Yes, I'll make the motion that if we can add that language into the qualifications.
As a preferred qualification.
Yes, demonstrated, somebody wrote it, and they wrote it so well, and I can't find it, but demonstrated knowledge,
Your staff has the right, will collect the right words.
Yes.
included in here.
yes. Demonstrated
Okay.
knowledge and experience of working, of, how would we phrase it? Yes,
Managing sustainable growth.
yes, yes, sustainable development practices to manage growth. Very good.
So there's a motion's been made that we incorporate into the job description as a preferred, what Ms. Cortez has said, having the knowledge and experience in sustainable development practices. And any other words that would support that, right? Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Dr. Garza. Okay. Any further, any discussion? There being none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you, so it's unanimous. Okay. Are there any others in your, I think this perhaps the way to go, we want to incorporate anything that is not, you did not see that you want to incorporate. We can go down each one, thinking about it in retrospect, we can go down every one. We want everybody to have an opportunity to express their views as what they would like to see, and we want to make sure that everybody has the ability to do that. But if we were to go that route and say, is there anything in the qualification that you did not see that you want to include, maybe, like we just discussed right now? Is there anything else anyone else wants to bring up? Mr. Rodriguez.
Currently, economic development is listed under knowledge, skills, and abilities. Knowledgeable in economic development, and I guess that's a little, it's not real definite or clear how much knowledge
Right.
is required. It's currently not one of the minimum qualifications, and I just kind of want to throw it out for discussion on what everybody thinks about maybe listing an actual certification. Let me just make sure. It's currently not in there, is it?
No.
Economic development, any kind of certification?
The only certification is the ICMA that we would like to have it. It
And-
says credential manager certification with International City Council. It was included in the job description.
Okay.
But that's a requirement, or is that
It's preferred.
it's preferred, because it's not in the charter,
Correct.
okay?
I-
So,
Yeah.
this would be, this is a preferred certification, and you're talking about an
Yeah.
economic development certification.
I'm talking about, actually making it a requirement that the individual, he or she, have a certification of some sort in economic development. And I say that because I really believe that we've missed the boat. The Valley continues to attract a lot of companies. San Antonio attracts a lot of companies, but let's keep it more with the Valley. That's more our competitor, I think, Mission, McAllen, even Del Rio, Eagle Pass. On the Mexican side, from my working experience, Laredo, even though we're geographically the most direct route between the industrial states of the U.S. and the industrial states of Mexico, we have the least number of manufacturing companies in our sister city. Eagle Pass, Del Rio have more than we do. Reynosa, down in the valley, has, probably about 7 times what we have in Laredo. So whether it's economic development on the Mexican side or economic development on the U.S. side, the U.S. side benefits. I believe there was a study done by Keith Patridge sometime back that for every 10 jobs you create on the Mexican side, 1 is created on the U.S. side. So if you've got 200,000 jobs on the Mexican side, you got 20,000 jobs on this side directly related to that production. So I believe that although the city leadership has talked about maybe setting up an economic development department and becoming a little more involved with that, I think we've seen a failure in the part of leadership in working with existing organizations that specialize in economic development. Case in point, the Laredo Economic Development Corporation. There's been very little interaction through the years. Not a whole lot of obvious cooperation. There's been some, but I think we'd all like to see a little bit more. That individual, whoever, the city manager is, would benefit a lot in talking to the Motor Carriers Association and how that relates to manufacturing and trucking, to US brokers, Mexican brokers, freight forwarders, everybody. But the reason I'm saying that we need to make it something required is because I think we all have come to the point where we need to begin to look at other ways to generate revenue. Although international trade is king in this area, we need some assistant kings that can also, you know, whether it be in the medical field, something to do with diabetes, you know, a research center, whether it be additional call centers, whether it be, I think the city manager needs to have a certification in economic development so that it's real clear in he or her, you know, her mind, what exactly it is, how it works, and how it's been successful in other areas. So that, you know, said a lot
Do you
there.
know which certification you're referring to specifically?
you know,
Which one? do you want them to have?
Let me share with you, I have a little bit of knowledge about that, and I think, and I just want to make sure everybody understands. In Texas, there is a basic economic development certification called Basic Economic Development course that is provided by Texas A&M University through the Texas Transportation Institute. It's a 2-week course that has been there for many years. It is, you do get certified, BE, they call it basically, BE, you're certified in completing the BEDC. It is a first step to what eventually becomes the, you know, the Association of Economic Development certification, which is, I think, the University of Oklahoma, is the last I remember it. That's a 3-year course, okay? So, but these are specific certifications that require people to attend and pass. If we impose, you know, one thing is to say, you know, I've had experience in economic development corporations, but if you get to the certification point, you know, that may narrow down against some folks as well. Keep in mind, it may be, it would maybe a desirable or preferred type of deal, but if you begin to require certifications, again, we narrow down the same issues that we're talking about over here.
Absolutely.
So, again, I went through that 20-some odd years ago, and there's a lot of folks that got a lot of benefit from that. But I think if you look at including that as a requirement for this job of a city manager, you're going to, again, narrow yourself down.
Okay.
I would consider, I agree with you that it's something that would be essential, maybe good for someone like us, but if we put it as a preferred versus a required, that would be again to the point of when we do the qualification enhancements or additional features.
Mr. Chair, I'd like just to clarify, most of these qualifications that you would approve today would be preferred because the charter does already prescribe the minimum qualifications. So you would put strongly preferred, and at the point of actually grading it, maybe make one of these qualifications a higher scale, and that's how you would weed them out. But we wouldn't be able to actually screen them and remove them from
But you could
consideration.
you could put them as preferred.
Exactly, and
not
grade
as
them
required.
accordingly.
Yeah, that's acceptable, you know, to me. I just am really, really concerned about, you know, bringing in an individual that is just gonna hit the ground running with economic development, or at least be willing to.
So a certification in a basic economic development course or more advanced, you know, economic development certification would be preferred.
Yes, yeah,
Okay, we need to put that in
that's
formal.
fine, and I agree, because, again, I don't wanna narrow it down, and if it can't be put as a requirement, then preferred is fine. And then maybe, you know, that if the individual doesn't, that within the first 6 months, he or she would obtain a
Well,
3-day or a 4-day.
that would be part of the negotiations. I think that when we get to that point, then there'll be something that you want to recommend as part of the negotiations
Yeah.
with the candidate.
May I,
But so
Chairman?
right now, we're looking at qualifications that we're trying to incorporate as preferred or
So we
required.
have a master's degree in public administration is preferred. Within those studies, you are studying economics for the governments, you are studying financial, you're studying all these other areas in the master's program for public administration. So
Probably is,
perhaps that would encompass your
It
needs.
may or may not, we just have, you know, I think we don't have knowledge of what their degree curriculum is gonna get into. I think it's very simple to say, if you're taking the BEDC course, you know, in whatever state it is, or a basic course, or you have an advanced certification in economic development, that would be easy, they could present as a credential. If they don't have it, doesn't mean that they don't they don't meet the criteria, but it would be a preferred, maybe put it this way.
So what we
It
could,
includes, for example, this degree includes urban planning, emergency management, transportation, economic development, community development, nonprofit information, criminal justice, IT, public finances. So that is what this degree does. And so if you put preferred, it has a little bit of everything that we do need.
But you're looking more specifically with more direct experience in economic development. They can have a master's in public administration and not have had any experience in economic development. And you're looking for someone, the candidate has had at least some degree of experience. I haven't either gone to the certification plus experience.
I just have a little bit of trouble with highly knowledgeable in economic development. I mean, who are you asking, you know,
Sure.
you know, so it needs to have a little bit more to it, I think, than just highly knowledgeable.
I think the point is very well taken, Mr. Rodriguez, and it underscores the need for that skill set. And it also, for the folks who are gonna choose the candidate, the city council, it underscores it for them as well. And maybe you can't require certification before they get here, but you certainly can suggest it to get it afterwards.
Sure.
As you mentioned.
maybe what I'm kind of hearing from y'all is that we have a minimum qualifications that's identified as per the charter, and those would be identified word for word as minimum qualifications. Then underneath that, a preferred qualifications list. And under preferred and desirable qualifications list, then we can add the credential manager certification, master's degree, we can add economic development certification as preferred. These are preferred, take that and specifically identify those preferred qualifications that some of the other members are asking to place in there, but not modify the knowledge, skills, and abilities. That's a job description, that's something that's earned and gained and over time with benefit that the city manager would acquire while he's here in office as well. So, but if you specifically identify it as a preferred and desirable qualification underneath minimum qualifications, then maybe you're addressing everything you're asking for. And same thing goes with what Tricia was asking for as well, for her classifications.
I think we're all saying the same thing. I think and we want to incorporate something that is more specific, but these are all going to be preferred or desired, because we may have some basic knowledge, like you have knowledge of economic development, but, you know, I don't know, Mr. Dueñas may have knowledge of that certification, or you know, but there may be other things that you want to see included as well. So we want to make sure that we don't leave anything out of what you would like to see in the qualifications. We know what's required, but what you would prefer or what you would desire to have included in the qualifications. So that tries to perhaps not narrow down the candidate, but perhaps strengthen the candidate, what we want to see in a candidate that comes before us. Correct?
Correct.
So, in your particular case, your request is that we incorporate as a preferred qualification, you know, either a certification from an economic development course, or, you know, basic or advanced, as into the preferred column. That's a motion.
I'd like to make that motion, yes.
Is that a second?
I'll second that.
Mr. Wade seconds it, okay. Is there any discussion? You have, Mr.
No, it's fine.
Any further discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, so we'll incorporate that as a preferred. That's two. Thank you. Are there any others?
I just wanted to ask if we could beef up two things and make them not just preferred, but perhaps required. I know a lot of people wanted a master's in public administration, wanted a certification in management, city management. So maybe we can beef that up, because I think right now it's just bachelor's that's required, but perhaps we can beef that up. I know quite a few people made that recommendation. That would be one.
And how would you like for it to be beefed up?
Just,
Would that it be required, perhaps, especially to have the city manager have that specific credential here, the ICMA, instead of it being desirable, that it be required.
Well, we cannot add any more requirements that are not included in the charter.
Okay.
That is correct.
Is that correct, Ms. Hale?
That's correct, but at the same time, this committee can decide, there's a screening process, there's two parts. There's a screening process that goes through HR, so just because they make it through the screening process for our charter doesn't mean that they necessarily need to go to the next step as far as interview process. So that's something y'all can decide at that level, but as far as completely eliminating them from consideration at the screening process is what I'm talking about, we have to go by the charter. But you can add additional requirements, at another level, if that's what you choose to do.
Because I guess what I'm looking at here too, if I may, Mr. Chairman, you know, bachelor's degree from any accredited college or university, I mean, that could be in anything. And we're looking at a city manager here. And I think it's important that maybe, you know, they get screened because they have a degree, but maybe we should look at, well, what type of degrees do we want these individuals to have? Because, you know,
Just
all
put-
degrees are great, but not all of them are great for a city manager, you know?
Then again, Michael Dell doesn't have a degree.
Yo estoy de acuerdo con Luis Benavides.
I mean,
Okay. So how, what are your wishes? What are you saying? You want a specific degree? Or we want to go to beyond a bachelor's degree? What is it?
Well, I mean,
Yeah,
that's why I was looking at to be honest with you, that's what I was looking at the city manager certification, because say you have a degree in education, okay, that's great, you know, that's wonderful. But to be a city manager, at least could you have this specific certification to show that, you know, throughout the years, your job experiences and has led you to be a qualified city manager?
I would reinforce the fact that I think we will get to the point when we look at the candidates that, let's say, because a minimum all the candidates are gonna come with a bachelor's degree, liberal arts, business, whatever, engineering, whatever. So that's a baccalaureate degree from an accredited university. That meets, if they got one, they get on the list. But if you want them to be specific about a bachelor's degree in this, that would be something that we would find either as individuals, as an added feature to cast my vote over one candidate over the other. I just don't know if it's, I guess I'm trying to understand if you want to get specific to a type of degree, a bachelor's degree, is that what you're asking?
Well, I mean, I'm, not so much, I just thought,
Because we're talking about some preferred, city management preferred certifications, right? And we're incorporating another certification preferred for economic development, okay? So, we could get into preferred for bachelor's degree, preferred, but not versus a required degree. I guess that's what I'm trying to get.
okay, well, so if I go back, then it's already preferred that they have the city manager, credential, the ICMA?
It's preferred,
That's already preferred.
Desirable.
That's in here.
So what's the difference between desirable and preferred?
It's the same thing.
It's the same thing?
To me, they're the
Okay.
same thing, to me, they're the same thing.
Okay, perfect,
To
well
me,
then,
to me, they're the same thing.
okay.
maybe highly preferred? I like Yvonne's recommendation of highly preferred.
Again, I think Mr. Rodriguez said it. When we get to the point of the candidates, of narrowing down our views or how we see the candidates, and review the process, we're gonna have our own opinion of who's a stronger candidate over the other based on what we wanna see in a candidate. But we're trying to get to the basic minimums for them to come before the search committee, that in turn would submit as their recommendation. You know.
That's where I think experience comes in, you know, I didn't learn a thing about leadership from my biology degree or medical school, but I taught myself some stuff. So it's experience, you know, and you have to look and see what they've got. You know? I think we all want the same thing, so how we're gonna get there.
Well,
And I don't want, and I don't wanna take away from anybody's, please don't get, I don't want you to get the impression, all of us have, have got to express our views, what we wanna see in the candidate, in these candidates. Everyone needs to have their say, because that's what we're asked to serve in the committee. I wanna make sure that everybody, puts their thoughts on the table and we have this discussion. I don't want to control the dialogue. I just want to make sure that everyone expresses their views of what they'd like to see, like you're doing right now, Ms. Rivera. I think it's important that your views, we need to, this is what I want to see. That's great for all of us to know, because we all may agree with you, you know. We all want the same thing, but then when we want to include it as a requirement versus a desired, that's what we need to narrow down tonight. You know.
If I might also add, the original draft that we were presented called for at least 10 years of experience in municipal government with 7 years in a supervisory role. Charter only says 7 and 5. So when the draft was originally put together, there was some consideration that maybe more years of experience is a directive that we need to look at. Now, that's one thing that I'd like to pose to tell you all. Are you all in agreement with just 7 and 5, or do you think it needs to be more stringent? Right now, 7 and 5 gives us more, an openness to get more candidates, obviously, but if we feel that it's better to have more experience, then we need to, that we can actually consider as a true requirement, as well as, you know, the others, the master's degree, if we want that. But I think I would personally go with preferred for the master's degree.
Perdón, primeramente estoy de acuerdo con mis Benavides. Para comentario con Iván, el 90% de US Custom Brokers y Mexican Custom Brokers solamente tenemos bachillerato. Solamente tenemos bachillerato y hay gente muy exitosa. Entonces yo estoy de acuerdo en que sea la base el bachillerato, el bachelor, ¿verdad? Y también sea una base de 5 años y el trabajo de seleccionar a la mejor persona es de nosotros. Porque ahí estamos tapando a la gente que podría ver gente valiosa y ya no reúne el requisito, ya no va a aplicar. Entonces el trabajo de nosotros es revisar esas aplicaciones, revisar esa gente. Por eso, si ustedes ven en mis recomendaciones, yo no me metí mucho con la academia. Para mí con la licenciatura es suficiente. No nos estorba que tenga un máster en relaciones públicas, en gobierno, bienvenido, ¿verdad? Bienvenido, lo tomaremos más en cuenta. Pero el trabajo selectivo de nosotros es escuchar a quien más aplicaciones tengamos, no dejar fuera gente que puede ser de valor. Gracias.
Mr. Chairman, you know, I just want to mention at this point, this is really good discussion. I think it's really, really good discussion because everybody on here has concerns and they're being addressed in one way or another. It may not be in the, you know, I wanted strawberry ice cream, they didn't have it, but at least I got vanilla, you know, and I think that it's, concerns are being addressed and concerns are being voiced and concerns are being addressed, and I'm really glad about that, you know, because we're kind of going forward and then taking a step back and saying, well, wait a minute. We want to go back to what the doctor said about that big net, you know, so that we can sort out the fish and not use a small net where it's all sardines, you know, we'd like a tuna maybe, or, you know.
Well, with that being said, Chairman, then maybe we should just leave what's already in place and then move forward. I just, you know, I have one thing that I do, and I don't know where it fits in here that I do want to talk about, is that when they put their experience and when they put their qualifications, is there some way that they can, you know, provide a sworn affidavit that everything is true and accurate?
I like that.
Because it's happened in other cities where there's been misinformation or, you know, a slight exaggeration of their work experiences and
So if they falsify their
Yes.
qualifications, that's grounds for,
disqualifying them, yes.
we've all had those in our office.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think maybe a sworn affidavit, that could be part of their application packet, and that if for some reason it's found that there's misinformation or omissions or additions that don't exist, that they've been disqualified. The other thing that I wanted to talk about, and I don't know if I should just lay them all out to you.
Let's make that in a motion first, because I think everybody's in agreement with you on that.
I think we all agree with you on that. What is right now in the city, in the employment guidelines, is there any language that makes reference to any misrepresentation of their credentials for any position?
If I may, Carol, third head from HR. When individuals apply, they do sign that what they're providing on their application is true to form when they apply through the organization. So if this is something that we're gonna do, since we're hiring a third party to do the recruitment aspect, we need to make sure that that's indicated on the application, on that end of the spectrum.
So the search firms themselves also have knowledge and experience that there is a guideline established by the city.
And we can ensure that when the contract is being done, that they include that aspect in the actual application that the individual's gonna sign off on.
Okay. No,
How about
that's good to know.
polygraph preferred?
No, that is required, that is required.
Mr. Chairman, Mrs. Galo made some really good recommendations here, and I think that our committee should do the homework of, or take on the work of doing homework into our top candidates at the end, like the way she's recommending here, that we verify that these accomplishments that they're gonna tell us they have and achievements that they have, that they are indeed accurate, and that they've left they're not coming from some huge major scandal that maybe we're not even aware of, or that doesn't get picked up. It's not for here, but I think that that's something that we should definitely do when the time is right.
And keep in mind, just for staff, is that we're not city employees, we don't have any experience of working for the city, so we have our experiences when we work either in our businesses, and we may have some assumptions of the way we work is the way the city works, so that's why we may be asking the staff some questions that may sound maybe petty, but we gotta ask them because we don't wanna assume that it's not. And I think Ms. Gaylor brings up a series of things here, including like credit checks, back with financial statements. In my business, I may be asking that of all, a credit report, but not everybody asks for that. Or I may be asking for an annual financial statement, but not everybody asks for that. So that's why, if there's something here in these recommendations, like Mrs. Gale was asking, such as that is incorporated in the basic requirements for key positions, is that something that's included in HR?
It's in overall for all our positions. So everybody who applies for any of our positions, even when we've recruited for the city manager in the past, because we've done the recruitment for the city manager, this statement is there.
Can you read that statement? Can you read that statement for us again?
Sure. It says the following terms were accepted by the applicant upon submitting the online application. By clicking accept below, I certify that all the information I have given herein is true and correct to the best of my knowledge, and I authorize the City of Laredo to investigate any and all statements contained in this application for employment as may be necessary to arrive at any employment decision. I further authorize the City of Laredo to conduct a general background investigation of my employment, educational history, military record, financial status, credit history, criminal record, and general reputation if applicable. In the event that I am offered a position with the city, I agree to submit to a drug and alcohol screening test as required by the City of Laredo drug and alcohol policy. I understand that such offer will be rescinded if I fail to do so within a time allowed by the policy, or if I test positive for drug or alcohol. Furthermore, I understand that false or misleading information in my application or interview may result in my termination. I also understand that if hired, I'm required to abide by all federal, state, and local laws, rules, and regulations which are applicable to all City of Laredo employees.
That's
That pretty much covers it.
that covers it quite a bit.
On the current information here that was given to us regarding the city manager's position, there's a paragraph here on page 3. It says, as part of the minimum requirements for all positions with the City of Laredo, a thorough background check and certified school transcripts will be required from all applicants who are offered employment. So, so we have, or the city has a right to do a background check.
Yes, we do.
Good.
And aside from all that, if they lie on their application, this is a governmental document, so it's against the penal code, and we have actually filed reports for people for lying on their applications.
Okay.
Of course, they were long gone by then, but so that is something that we could also pursue. So I don't think that's something we need to worry about with all this language. And
So that covers those specific areas of the financial reporting and qualifications.
Most of it, but I also have a concern with, if the city manager has any business dealings with anything that would come up in front of him or her or the council. And I think the state I know that the state requires all elected and appointed officials to have their financial statement, as public record, so that things like that don't happen.
Conflicts of interest.
Conflicts of
Conflict of
interest. And maybe if we could implement that, or we could suggest to council, I don't know if it would be in the application process, but I think if our elected officials.
Because city managers aren't required to do it until after they've been appointed, as opposed to candidates for elected office, they have to provide it before.
Beforehand.
So that's something you might want to include.
So that you're made aware of any
prior to.
potential conflicts of interest that they
Are you
may
talking about,
The personal finance.
businesses,
Personal
business
finance.
alliances, business ventures, et cetera, et cetera? Okay.
Yeah.
Disclosure of any business alliances or any ties to city government business or city business? Okay, that's a good point. Would you want that to be included
As a motion.
as,
Yes.
you know, in the actual part of the, application process?
I would think so. I would like to make that motion.
That they know up front.
Yeah, so we know up front.
And how would
We
you
don't
do
know
that, Ms. Hale? You guys, for them to certify that they're not a conflict, like it is a form of a conflict of interest, but I mean, to disclose if they're currently or in the past have had any,
It's currently, it's the personal finance statement, pretty much, it's a form they have to file anyway, once appointed, I think within a few months after, being appointed. So this is something that you could require beforehand, so that you can ensure that there is nothing there.
The application process.
Right.
Yes, I would like to make a motion that it's required before
okay, well,
they're hired.
just for purpose, does anyone have any major objections to that before we go? Because I think we gotta put it into a motion. I think is everybody pretty much in agreement that we feel the same way about that?
Would that be for like our top candidates or for everybody?
Talking about city manager right now, with this position right now.
No, right, but I mean
For our top candidates.
for our top
Oh.
candidates? Like at what level does that kick in?
At the interview process or after we make the offer? When would you?
No, I would see it in the interview process.
At
I
the
would
interview
like to know, while we're interviewing them, if they have,
Like for the
I
finalists.
I second that.
yes, I would say, well, all of it, I mean, let's just say to all of them, and.
Once the selection for interviewing
Yes,
occurs?
exactly.
So,
Oh,
okay,
yeah,
so what,
yes.
how would you like for the motion to read?
Exactly the way she said. She recommended.
That any candidate, any finalists, that they provide a disclosure that they have any current ties to any form of city business.
And that would be done through their financial, right, through their financial.
Disclosure.
I would suggest a friendly amendment, Mr. Schrebel, that the word financial, the word finalist be struck. I think we should know up front.
I agree.
Candidates, so any candidates, so, let's go back to the motion. I don't wanna put words in my mouth. The motion would be that any of the candidates be able to provide a disclosure that they, of any business they may have had, any business ties they may have had to any city government business,
To any city government business.
right?
In City of Laredo.
City of Laredo, so I'm talking about city of Laredo, yes. Is that correct?
Yes, that all
Is that-
candidates.
is that your
shall
motion?
provide that
But isn't
financial.
yeah, provide some financial.
All candidates shall provide a financial statement, I guess similar to what elected and appointed officials do for the state of Texas
Prior to.
prior to.
That makes sense, let's make sure we get the motion correct, okay?
But just the portion on the business interest, the financial statement.
I think a financial statement on everything, I think,
Does in their financial statement that they submit, does it show they have to disclose? Because the financial statement is just an assets and liabilities statement, you know? But, I mean, you have to be more specific.
Well, I guess both.
Disclosure of any business ties to the city of Laredo government,
in addition to their their financial statement.
okay? So
Exactly.
Are we clear? Are we clear on that? So that's the motion, is there a second?
Discussion, I think that we should
There's a
add,
second, there's a second. Okay, let's have a discussion.
I think we should add additional language as, if you were in fact appointed as city manager, would you be in a position to have a conflict of interest, in that position? Because they may not have any specific dealings, but, you know, is there anything that would be a potential conflict of interest if you became city manager? Or is that redundant? That may be redundant.
But that might be objective to the person. They might not think they have a conflict of interest, and they may very well have one.
Okay. Well,
I'm just-
I'll pull that back. I think the way you've had it is fine.
Okay.
Hay una cuestión. Hablan de probar, ¿cómo probaría sus finanzas? ¿Con sus incomes? ¿Con un estado financiero? ¿Cuál sería la forma ideal?
What we're asking here is a financial statement, basically, which lists their, you know, their assets and liabilities, shows their financial stability. And then, but we're asking also for a disclosure that they're not, that there's no conflict of interest, have any business ties with the city, specifically to the city of Laredo, Texas. That's what we're talking about here. Any other further discussion? If not, call the question. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
All opposed? 3 motions. That's good, Chick. Good. That's what you're saying. Good dialogue, good discussions. Let's talk about, we're on a roll. Let's get some more ideas.
One other thing I wanted to raise, and, you know, Laredo's the most Hispanic city in the country. We're like 95% Hispanic. I don't know if we are the most, but I've heard this all the time. And, you know, there can be a culture shock for people who are not familiar with the border or speak Spanish and things like that. So as, you know, Mr. Rodriguez has talked a lot about, we want somebody who can come and hit the ground running. And when you're dealing with a business population and also a population of people that is overwhelmingly bilingual, or in some cases Spanish dominant, I do think Spanish should be required. And I just think it's such an important part of how life happens in Laredo and how business transactions happen. And so I would like to recommend that. And there are some, I know there are universities or colleges that are Hispanic serving institutions. I don't know if that exists in city governments, but if there is a familiarity with dealing with Hispanic population and Hispanic culture, I think would be an asset, I think, for governance in this city. And I don't know how we could beef that up a bit more. I think it says communication orally in Spanish is preferred. And I don't know, I think it needs to be stronger than that. I would like for us to consider Spanish to be a requirement, or having worked, or at least having worked in predominantly Hispanic institution or city.
I have a point. Yo en mis recomendaciones puse que fuera bilingüe, que tuviera un manejo del inglés y del español. Incluso si habla mandarín, para mí sería formidable, ¿verdad? Pero yo creo que estamos también, volvemos a limitar a la gente valiosa. La grandeza de este país son los ciudadanos americanos y deben de hablar muy bien el inglés. Y si el español no lo domina muy bien, pues le ponemos un traductor, ¿no?
Maybe we have to require that they speak English correctly.
Sí, porque digo, si no habla bien el inglés y no habla bien el español, pues no. Con que esté en un English perfect, para mí está bien. Y si habla español es un plus, es una ganancia, es algo mejor en su calificación. Pero no creo que deba ser requisito que sea bilingüe. Es mi punto de vista. O sea, es bueno, pero no es indispensable.
Any other thoughts? Anyone?
I agree with Mr. Dueñas. I think it's important, but again, I think it's be part of our wish list and part of the interview process and so forth, that if you're stuck on 2 people and they're you know, one's from the state of Maine and one's from Arizona, and they're identical in the experience and everything, and one speaks Spanish, then you can make the decision. But I think, again, I go back, you know, to throwing that net out and just getting as many people as you possibly can. I know there's been a lot of people that have moved to Laredo that probably, you know, there is a little bit of a culture shock, but they perform for companies here in Laredo, whether it be banks, whether it be the railroads, truck lines. They have limited to no ability to speak Spanish, but fortunately, they have people working for them that can help them with that, you know. And so I guess we need to go back, just, you know, we do not want to do anything that is going to narrow the pool of candidates, because, you know, the doc said, throw out that net, you know, just kidding. But I think it would be nice.
Well, maybe in the second tier, I do think it's critical for us. I just think our geography, our interactions with Mexico, our interactions with Spanish-speaking individuals, I think you're at a disadvantage if you cannot communicate well enough for a lot of the population, you know. So maybe in a tier 2, as we're filtering out candidates, that we really take a hard look at that.
And I do believe that, I think we're going back when we get to the point of narrowing down the candidates, some of the things that, the strengths in the candidate, I think pretty much all of us clearly understand that language, you know, at least an understanding of the Spanish language, something that you'd want to have an individual here. I mean, I've got people tell me they speak Spanish and they may not understand it. They can say a few words, but they really understand. Can't they communicate? And I think that's why the diversity of this committee is key. Mr. Dueñas was obviously very fluent. He could help us in determining whether, you know, that individual is something that all of us can determine that, because we're bilingual, those of us that are bilingual. But I think at the end of the day, it's going to narrow down to our own, what we see that as a strength, and narrows down the candidate even further.
You know, it's terribly important that this individual be able to conduct business with Mexico, or at least understand, because this city manager, his business is going to be Laredo first. Right. But I think that we need to have someone that can really handle themselves in Austin and in Washington, because that's where the money comes from.
That's another element.
Yeah. That's where the money comes from. Yeah, and what I was getting at is, this individual's gonna have to be really sharp in English to be able to negotiate and wheel and deal, if you will, with the folks in Austin to get funding, in Washington to get funding, because we have missed the boat in a lot of cases. You know, millions and billions of dollars are doled out every year, and in my humble opinion, we get crumbs most of the time. And I think an individual who can really handle himself in the primary language that is spoken in Austin and Washington is going to be critical.
That's why I think this exercise that we all went through, and us sitting down and writing down things that we would like to see in the candidates, is basically telling what I'm going to be looking at into the candidate that I interviewed. And I think that was a valid exercise, because I think that'll dictate, you know, the basic guiding documents, what I'm going to be looking for, in addition to what's already the qualifications. Now, when we get to that point, I hope that we have even further dialogue and discussion. This where we look at, hey, let's focus on the strengths of these candidates, and let's say we all agree that this will be, you know, I hate to bring it up, because you're going to have, hopefully we have a good number of candidates, but at the end of the day, we are going through a process. And there may be people out there in the public thinking that these things already been decided. And I want to say nothing's been decided, because we haven't voted on anybody. Yet we haven't even interviewed the candidates. But there may be some thinking out there that give us the opportunity to go through the process of identifying the qualifications, hiring a search firm who will bring us the candidates that allow us to go through that process. So hopefully, you know, through these public meetings that we're having, which is open to the public, that the public will be able to see that there are no choices been made already. There's no inside agenda here. We're all working on selecting the best candidate for the city manager of Laredo, Texas. So, going back, are there any other things that we'd like to, see that we want to incorporate into the qualifications? I would, really, I'm very encouraged that everyone is really, these are all great comments. So-
I don't have any more suggestions for criteria, search criteria. However, perhaps one that would be a potential question, if it's not already in there, would be something along the lines of, have you ever taken on a new position of leadership in a community you did not live in or were not otherwise intimately familiar with? And if you were, if the answer is yes, then how did you prepare for that position? It's a simple question. I'm sure everybody's thinking about the same thing too, but maybe when they get to the interview stage.
That would be a very good question to ask, yes. Okay.
One of the things that I looked at in regards to the candidates that, from my standpoint, and I think you alluded to it, Mr. Rodriguez, the ability to negotiate with all different forms of factions or groups. We, those of us that come city council meetings, sometimes it can be an art on how to deal with different groups and accepting everyone's opinion and not becoming a contentious type of discussion. And at the end of the day, city manager that we have, as form of government, reports to the city council, and they take their lead from the city council. That's the way the city government, the city manager, form of government is. But I want to make sure that I think all of us are focusing on some basic elements of what we want the candidate to be. I will tell you, I will weigh heavily on someone who has, very patient negotiating skills, be willing to deal, with not just what you've got sitting in the council, but with the public, and be responsive and be sensitive to the public views. And that's something that I weigh very heavily because our city has gone through so many transitions of different managers and different styles that I think the public wants to see a different type of person in these meetings, city council meetings, that is sensitive and willing to deal with all different groups and hear everybody out. I will weigh heavily on that, on the candidate.
Mr. Chairman, something you said a couple of minutes ago is going to prompt me to move that we go into executive session for private consultation with legal counsel on personal matters, specifically related to minimum requirements and desired qualifications for the office of city manager under 551.071 and 551.074 of the Texas Open Meetings Act.
Okay?
I'll second.
Do we have to make a motion to go into?
Yes.
But there has to be a valid excuse to go.
What is the purpose?
And it's a class of employees, when there's not a particular employee, would not need an exception. It just depends on the purpose. Is there something you need to consult with counsel? Like, is it a legal issue that you believe warrants the exception?
It's not about a specific employee. It's a discussion of a sensitive nature, but not about a specific employee. And has to do with the duties of this committee.
Okay.
You can go then not under the personnel exception, but under the consultation with attorney.
Okay. So the purpose of the going to executive is to consult with legal, correct?
Yes, and
All right.
once we're in there, I'll make sure that it's something that would fall under this exception.
All right. So, we have to make a motion to go into executive session?
Yes.
Okay, is there a motion that we go into executive session?
So moved.
Move. Second? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? So, give us a few minutes.
Mr. Chair, could you instruct us who you would like besides council? Do you want city staff as well? Or do you need
I
to?
want, you have any objections besides legal?
I think legal's fine.
Just legal?
It's legal.
Just legal. And, we've just finished our went into executive session and no action was taken. And we'll proceed now into, continue our discussion about, qualifications. Any further discussion in regards to some other elements of the qualifications that we want, that were not included, that we want to see would incorporate into the job description? Any others that we want to include? So I think we find that pretty much the consensus that what we've discussed today, plus what's already included in the qualifications that we have here, is adequate enough to go and present to the recruiting firm, so that they can go ahead and, now we know the qualifications, now we have to go back and now we have to determine which recruiting firm we're gonna hire. So that date is set for the next RFP deadline is what, for when?
Closing is May the 10th, I believe. Let me double check. If you give me a moment.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I'm gonna have to excuse myself. I do have another engagement that I need to be at.
That would not, for purpose of the quorum, it would not.
Five?
Yeah, we're
Since
good.
you're
So
nine.
we're good?
Good, we're good. Thank you very much, Mr. Split.
Mr. Chairman, the closing date for the RFP is May the 9th, so we will open bids May the 10th.
And that is that's just to remind everyone, that we went ahead and extended the term for submission of RFPs. So, this will be, we receive any more RFPs as of May the 10th, you'll open it May the 10th?
Correct, yes. They close on May 9th and we open May the 10th at 9 a.m.
Okay. So that's for the recruiting. For our purposes, I think we've narrowed down the qualifications that would be submitted to the recruiting firm, that in turn will be selected to identify potential candidates to come before this committee. Correct? So, that means that we need to now look at selecting a date for our next meeting.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. Did you want us to come back with a revised, updated recruitment bulletin so that you all can?
Yes, I think that would be wise for us to incorporate these recommendations, the motions that were made, and incorporate them into a revised qualifications statement.
For your next meeting, that way you can
And
review it in motion.
we all receive a copy of that, and make sure that it is as we requested it to be. And then we also review those and present those at the next meeting as well.
Thank you.
Anybody have any objections to that? So,
Just a quick question. On the knowledge, skills, and abilities, I was kind of trying to read through here again real quick. Knowledge, skills, abilities. You know, working with integrity, working with, yeah,
ethics? No.
ethics, integrity, I mean, yeah, I know that it's kind of understood that the person that is selected should have, you know, those characteristics, a person that is empathetic, working, willing to work, you know, in a manner that's, you know, shows that he or she is, you know, behind integrity 100% and demands it of their people. And I was just, you know, thinking that, you know, because we've had obviously some situations in our past, you know, regarding leadership and so forth. There's been some things that have come up that involve integrity and involve things like that. I don't know, is it allowed, or is it proper to have something, you know, in there as a, I mean, what would you call it, a skill? I mean, you either have it or you don't. You know.
Well, I think when we go
integrity.
to the purpose of selecting the recruiting firm, I don't think it would, for us to express those views of what as we talk about the candidates and the qualifications, that in addition to what we're asking here, these are my personal expectations, these are what I'm gonna be looking for as well. And I think that would be, maybe that'd be an appropriate time, to express some of those views. Because at the end of the day, we're all gonna have our own evaluation, and we're all, hopefully, we all come to a unanimous decision, and we have a consensus. That's the objective of finding the candidate. But I think it would be an opportunity for us to express in that process of the interview of the candidate, what we're looking for.
Mr. Chair, In keeping in mind with what Mr. Rodriguez said, one of the things that I had put down, which is not really a qualification, but it's an idea, and maybe I can just put it out here in case nobody saw it. But I just thought once we got to maybe our top 3 or so candidates, that a committee could be formed that could be comprised of some members of this ad hoc committee and some members of city council to actually go and interview people that these finalists have worked with. And maybe you can get a sense of those qualities that you're talking about by talking to, if they were a city manager somewhere else, maybe some department heads they worked with, and people that they've worked with, and you can kind of get, because that's kind of what you're talking about is so important, and only someone that's worked with them
Yeah.
previously can tell you those things for sure.
I saw
So-
that on your input, and I liked it, you know, because there's nobody that's gonna tell you more of the truth than the people that have worked with them, you know, so,
And,
hopefully.
yeah, hopefully. Well,
I would, that's a great idea, Mrs. Galo. One of the things that we did when we interviewed candidates to come to our residency programs, we were pressed for time, so we interviewed them via Zoom. And we recorded that because only 2 or 3 of us got to interview all of them. The rest of us got to see the video because there's a lot of body language and those kinds of things. So perhaps we could do something similar, even if it's just 2 or 3 of us who interview all these people. We could do it via Zoom, record it, and then we all have access to that. Just so everybody has their own interpretation. It's just a thought. It's more time consuming and technically challenging, but just a thought.
I just want to remind everyone received, was emailed a copy of the ethics manual from the city. Everybody received a copy. You know, if you read, you know, we received 2 manuals, plus we also had asked everyone to, also,
Take the course.
take the course, as well on the Open Meetings Act. And, if you have not done so, you have, there's a timetable that needs to be met, and submit your certificate to staff for the record, because then it becomes public record as well. So read these manuals, get a chance to glance and review those. It also allows us to better understanding of city government, you know, is doing, and at the same time, complete those. Does everybody complete those pretty much? Good. Good. All right. Is there any other business before the committee that we need to do? We need to look at dates for our next meeting.
Well, we have one on the 15th already set.
Wednesday, the 15th, I think we have.
May?
Yes.
May.
I don't know if that's too soon, given the open date, or it's right on target.
So is May the 15th still a viable date for our next meeting? It's a Wednesday. We do have 2, 3 members who are not here today that we need to communicate to them. For purposes of our next meeting, 5:30 is the date, the time adequate?
yes.
For Wednesday, the 15th. Anyone have any problems with that date?
And the purpose of that meeting will be specifically to,
Review the RFPs that have been submitted.
okay,
Review the revised qualification statement that we have. And hopefully we'll get some good RFPs and had a chance to review and to kind of score them to see, we should hopefully make a selection based on discussion as to the process. Correct? Any further business? So the 15th of May, 5:30,
No.
meeting here will be the next meeting.
May
of
what,
the-
May what?
15, 15?
Okay,
Okay.
any other business?
motion to adjourn.
Okay, meeting adjourned.
15.